Okay, yeah, we're back after a couple of 2 or 3 weeks there. So where we left off with this is that I got kind of thinking that 10 to 15 horsepower that I seem to be down might be caused by the valve lash that's here now because of when I switched the valve lifters from hydraulic to solid. I needed to run some valve lash there, and it's kind of shaping up like maybe I'm losing duration at the valve because of the valve lash. So that's my theory right now. That's just a hypothesis. I don't know for sure whether that's it or not, but I kind of want to find out. So what I kind of alluded to last time was that the next video would be putting the 1.7 rockers on here and putting in some new valve lifters. And I thought, well, I think it might be worth it to just put the valve lifters in first and run it again with these rocker arms. So new hydraulic lifters with the stock rocker arms, and then see if that horsepower comes back, because I'm kind of curious about that. And then after that we can put the 1.7s on and see how we do there. When I went to buy the lifters, I noticed that, and I'm sure other people have seen this themselves, is that the prices have gone up. I don't want to talk about so much about the name brands that I was looking at, but there were ones that I'm sure you've seen before. They had gone up. The ones I was looking at before, I can't remember what they were before, but it seems like they're like $100 more than they used to be, which is it was kind of surprising. I did some looking around and I found some that were a lot cheaper, but they're kind of like so much less expensive that I'm a little bit nervous about them. So what we can do is we can have a look at those. So here's the lifters that I got, and I've never used this brand before on anything, so I have no idea what to expect with it. And if anybody is interested, that is the part number I got for it. And let me get something to open that with. I'll go grab one of the original ones. Let me peel this back so you can see it. That's a factory roller lifter. And let's see. I was kind of concerned about the height, because I saw some people concerned, I'm not going to mention what brand it was, but they bought a certain brand of replacement lifter and it was a little bit taller, and it meant that they had to lift the head up. They had to loosen the head up a little ways to make room for that lifter. But it looks like this one is very, very similar. So I guess I'm not too concerned about that. Something I'm kind of noticing now is like the width of the contact area on this lifter is a little bit narrower than that lifter there. It's probably okay. So what I'll say about these lifters here is that delivered to my house, they were about 120 something, $120 some, which is a half to a third of what some of the others wanted for it. And yeah, that's enough less expensive to kind of make me a little unsure, you know. But so using these, just installing these and running them, will kind of be a little bit of an experiment all in and of itself. Just by looking at them, you know, there's little I can tell in terms of the quality of these just by looking at them. So far, I'm not seeing anything crazy about them. So, but what I am considering, I would kind of like to look inside one of them. That cup there is kind of different than the original one too. So anyway, I think what I'll do is just check them, see that the rollers are all spinning freely. Put them in an oil bath for a little while, and just install them, I guess. So I guess my curiosity kind of got the better of me. So I just wanted to look inside one of these lifters and see if it was any different than the original ones, and apparently this part here, the spring and this part of the plunger and the way the check valve works there, that looks very similar to the original design. The only place that seemed to be different was the design of this cup here for where the push rod meets the lifter, and this plate here that goes on top of this. And but yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to see there. So let me put this back together and we'll get moving along. Okay, so I put that lifter back together, and I'm just going to let those soak in there for a little while. Okay, so got the engine all back together, got the lifters in there. I think the next thing to do is I just want to start it and listen to it, and then while I'm doing that, I'll get the ignition timing set. We'll put that back at, I'll probably go back to 35 to 36, where it's kind of been in that 35 to 36 all this time, so I think I'm just going to put it right back to that. And then after that, we can run this and see how it does, and see if we get that 10 to 15 horsepower back. So let's do that next. And something I kind of wanted to mention is that I went ahead and got an oil pressure sending unit for the data acquisition system. So now we can log the oil pressure while the engine's running. And I think that about to be some interesting stuff to look at too. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that before I forgot about it. When I first started it up, it was a little bit noisy, but it seems like it's quieting down. What I'll say is that after the engine ran for a while, warmed it up, I got about 160, 170 degrees. And after that, the engine really quieted down, and it idles pretty smoothly, I think. Okay, so we did I did a couple of pulls there. I only recorded the one on the camera, but did 2 pulls basically back to back. And here's the data that I got from it, and I'll go over this again here, where this horsepower column here is the horsepower that the data acquisition collected or calculated. And then, but I find often that this is kind of a little bit out of phase with these numbers here. So if I was doing steady state stuff, and it wasn't doing like a kind of like a transient test, it would be fine. But because these things are changing, and it ends up a little bit out of phase. So what I do is I put over here, over in this column here, it's just that speed times the torque divided by 5252, and these are so the horsepower numbers that I'm going to use are over here. And you know, here see the variable, or the parameters up here that I was recording, and you see, and the other thing is that the blow by, I didn't have that hooked up for this, but so these numbers don't mean anything. But here you can see the oil pressure that I was recording. That's the new thing, the new input that I have in there now, which I think is should be good to have in the future. I really wish I'd had it for that test where I did the oil change with the additive. That would have been really nice to see there. But unfortunately I didn't have it at that time. So let's have a look down through here. So this is the first run I did. and these torque numbers seem like what I've seen before. Seem like what I've seen this engine do before. And here's some of the horsepower numbers. And you know, that 289 there and that number there, probably, you know, I can see that there's possibly it would be nicer if my data acquisition was able to sample these things at a faster rate, but that's probably that number there's probably got some issues with it. So I'm not going to go ahead and call it a 289 horsepower pull there. It probably wasn't there. And the other thing that was going on in this one is that I didn't the engine RPM ramp rate was going up kind of quickly for this test here, rather than a smoother increase in RPMs over time. And so I didn't really like the way that one went. So I went ahead and I ran it a second time, basically back to back. And the other thing that was about that one, the other thing about this test that I didn't really care for too much is that the engine really wasn't. Well, I guess it kind of was. Where is it? Well, anyway, the main thing I didn't like about this one is the way the engine RPM ramped up. It wasn't as smooth as I'd like it, and that probably means that that number there is it's a little suspect. So I ran it a second time, basically back to back. And the nice thing about the second run was that it kind of got the oil temperature warmed up a little bit more, because it was a fairly cold day today. Before I went into the room, it was like 45 degrees outside. So it wasn't that temperature inside the room, but it was a pretty cool day outside. And then just scroll through some of this data here so you can look at it. And I do it this way so that you can I'm showing you the data that I get before I do anything to it, and you can kind of make your own decisions, make up your own minds about what's going on with this thing. But in this pull, I think this one went quite smoothly, and I like the way this one turned out. And so that's the number, that's the horsepower number there I'm going to go with, and I'm going to round that'll round easily to 280. So I'm going to say that engine made about 280 horsepower that time. The thing that's kind of got me a little puzzled is that if you look at this data, it looks like it made peak torque at like 5100. Maybe. I don't know. That seems kind of like a high RPM with this kind of camshaft and everything. It just seems like kind of a high RPM to be making peak horsepower at. My guess is that it's actually maybe down here someplace, and that maybe anyway. There's just limitations to what my data acquisition can do, but then again, maybe this is just what it's doing. I don't know. So those are the numbers I got there. Now what we can do next is have a look at, so I cleaned the data up a little bit, and I kind of had to do that. So this is the first run, and this is the second run. And I kind of have to do that and in order to make a graph here. Otherwise, it kind of the dots are all over the place, and it kind of doesn't make any sense. But some people had expressed some interest in seeing the data in a graph like this, and I kind of you know, just the limitations of my data acquisition system. It doesn't make a very smooth curve. You know, you probably watched other videos where they have really good equipment and everything, and but all I can say about my stuff is that it works halfway decent, but it hasn't had a team of, you know, a multi-disciplined team of engineers working on it for the last 30 years perfecting it. It's just been me, and my uncle helps me with this stuff, you know, with things like signal conditioning and programming, you know, the programming side of things. He helps me with those things, and but you know, so it's just basically me and him that have worked on this thing, and it's not going to be as good as like a really well researched or designed, you know, dyno. And then, you know, the thing of it is there is like you look at the differences there. It's like, well, uh, one of those dynos is going to cost way more than one of those dynos is going to cost way more than mine. And those dynos I don't think I'll ever be able to afford. I'd like to have one, but I don't think I'll ever be able to afford it. Anyway, I've gone on about that long enough. It's there's just limitations to my dyno, but I think it turns out halfway decent results. But anyway, cleaned these up here, and there's a plot of the there's a graph of the horsepower and the torque. Now this part here, the way it kind of went up quickly like that, had more to do with the way I was controlling the load on the through the absorber. That's mostly what that is. But this part out here, I remember when I was running it through this part, it was going up a little bit faster than I wanted to. I mean, the engine speed was going up a little bit faster than I wanted to, but pretty smooth. It was going up faster than I wanted to, but it was going up smoothly. So in this section of the graph right here, I think you can take something away from that. And then the same thing up through here with the horsepower numbers. And so that was that one. And again, I've got my suspicions about that RPM number and that horsepower number, but I really liked the way this test went a lot better. It seemed like I was controlling the engine speed, the way the engine speed increased a lot better, and it was going up pretty smoothly there. So turns out this is the horsepower number that I like out of these tests that I got. So I think we're at 280. So I don't know, you guys can or folks can look at this over more, and you can leave comments about it. I don't mind. Uh, but anyway, that's what I got today. So now the last thing we can do is go over here and look at all the comparisons that I got over the course of this project. And this is today. And so this number here, I saw it too. Anyway, so this is the number I'm going with for today, and that, given the atmospheric conditions today, it corrected down to 270, which is, you know, the highest corrected horsepower I've ever gotten. So just judging by this, I have my opinion is that the valve lifters, anyway, going from the high mileage, this one here was with the high mileage lifters, the high mileage hydraulic lifters, and this is what the numbers I got after converting them to solid lifters. And it does kind of seem like I lost something there. And then when I went from here back to here, the horsepower came back. Now, one of the things that's different between this run here and this run here is that I didn't have my the dyno room instrumented for atmospheric conditions or air pressure and temperature. Didn't have that day. So that could influence this stuff here a little bit, because, you know, like that's what the temperature was outside that day, and I can pretty much guarantee you that the temperature inside the room that day was probably higher than that. So these are differences. Unfortunately, I didn't have that at that time, so comparing these two might not be completely fair. But at any rate, this is the highest horsepower I've measured, the highest corrected horsepower I've measured on this engine so far. And it does seem to me like the lifters helped this quite a bit. I mean, what are we looking at there? 25 horsepower? 25 horsepower. That's, you know, who knows. That might be right. I don't know. But it does seem to me like going back to the hydraulic lifters helped quite a bit. But one thing I did notice about it was that, you know, the new lifters were really quiet. I remember before the other ones were really noisy, and they had a lifter tick that I couldn't get rid of. So I'm liking the way this engine runs a lot better than, this is the best the engine's run so far in terms of noise and performance. I guess that's where I'm going to end this video. I am happy that horsepower number seems to have come back up. I guess what the next thing to do is start working on getting those 1.7 rockers in there. Maybe before I run that, I would like to do some more kind of measurements on that, and maybe plot out the lift versus crank angle curve on the both of them, the stock ones and the new ones. Maybe I think that might be interesting to look at. So that's what we got coming up. Anyway, that's all I got for now, and I'll see you next time.